We're going to tear down the romanticized images of valiant charges and glorious battles, and instead we're plunging headfirst into the truly grotesque, visceral reality of the trenches of World War I. Forget the sepia-toned photographs. We're going for the dirt, the cold, the terror, and the omnipresent wriggling horror that shared every inch of space with the soldiers. Get ready for a journey that will make you appreciate your modern comforts like never before. If you're listening, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me where you are and what time it is for you. Alright, find that cozy spot, dim the lights, and prepare for a stark awakening. You stand there, a fresh recruit, the uniform still stiff on your back, the boots pinching slightly. The air around you, just miles from the front, already feels different. It's a subtle shift, a growing weight in the atmosphere, a hum that isn't quite natural, a distant rhythmic thud that vibrates through the soles of your feet. This isn't the war you've read about, the one of brave speeches and marching bands. No, this is something else entirely, something ancient and primal stirring in the earth. You can smell it now, a faint, metallic tang on the breeze, like old pennies and something decaying, something sickly sweet and cloying, yet sharp, biting at the back of your throat. It's not a smell you can place, not yet, but it announces itself with a sinister certainty, a herald of the horrors to come. You try to swallow, but your throat is dry, constricted, and a knot of dread tightens in your gut. This isn't just about fighting an enemy, you realize, it's about fighting against the very fabric of existence as you know it. The world is being peeled back, layer by layer, revealing an ugly, churning underbelly that your civilian mind struggles to comprehend. The men around you, those who've been here longer, their faces are etched with a weary resignation, their eyes holding a distant, haunted look you can't quite decipher. They move with a slow, deliberate cadence, as if every action is a struggle against an invisible force. Their uniforms are caked with mud, their skin tinged with an unnatural pallor, and their voices, when they speak, are low and gravelly, devoid of the cheerful banter you once associated with soldiers. You watch them, absorbing every detail, trying to glean some understanding of what lies ahead, but their silence is more eloquent than any words. It's a silence born of profound experience, a knowledge that cannot be articulated, only endured. You feel a sudden, overwhelming urge to turn back, to run from this place and its suffocating embrace, but the path is sealed. There is no turning back, only forward into the maw of this unseen beast. The sounds, too, begin to intrude on your carefully constructed sense of normalcy. The distant thudding grows louder, deeper, punctuated now by a sharp, cracking retort, like a giant whip tearing through the air, followed by a low, guttural growl that seems to emanate from the very bowels of the earth. Artillery, you realize, a word you've heard countless times but never truly understood. Now it's a living entity, a monstrous voice speaking a language of destruction. The air pulses with its rhythm vibrating through your bones, making your teeth ache. You find yourself clenching your jaw, your hands fisted at your sides, a futile attempt to brace yourself against the unseen blows. You're not just hearing the war, you're feeling it in every fiber of your being, a physical manifestation of its overwhelming power. The ground beneath your feet, too, becomes an active participant in this symphony of dread. It's no longer firm, stable earth, but a churning, viscous muck, slick with a perpetual dampness that seeps through your boots, chilling your toes. Every step is an effort, a struggle against the grasping, sucking mud that threatens to swallow you whole. It's a taste of what's to come, a prelude to the relentless, omnipresent filth that will soon define your existence. You look down and your boots are already coated, the pristine leather disappearing under a thick, greasy film. It feels as if you're already sinking, not just into the earth, but into a different reality, one where cleanliness and comfort are distant, forgotten luxuries. The rumors reach you first, whispered in hushed tones around flickering campfires, tales of the front that sound more like medieval fables than contemporary warfare. Stories of endless mud, of constant shelling, of men disappearing without a trace, swallowed by the earth or blown to atoms. But alongside these grim tales, there's another, more insidious type of story, one that makes your stomach clench with a particular kind of revulsion. They speak of companions that are not human, of an army of the unseen, a pervasive infestation that shares every inch of the trench. They talk about rats, not just one or two, but thousands, tens of thousands, a living, breathing tide of them. They speak of their size, their boldness, their sheer numbers, their insatiable hunger. You dismiss it as exaggeration, as a grim joke, a way to scare the fresh arrivals. But a small, cold tremor runs down your spine, a seed of unease planted deep within you. You try to shake it off, to rationalize it, but the image, once conjured, refuses to dissipate. You continue your march, a slow, plodding progress towards the unseen horizon where the battle rages. The landscape around you begins to transform, subtly at first, then dramatically. Trees are skeletal, stripped bare, their branches reaching like gnarled, desperate fingers towards a perpetually grey sky. The fields are churned, scarred, pockmarked with craters, resembling the surface of some alien dead world. Nothing seems natural here, nothing grows, nothing thrives, save for the pervasive sense of desolation. This is a landscape consumed by war, a testament to its destructive power, a canvas of despair painted in shades of mud and ash. You pass derelict farmhouses, their roofs caved in, their walls crumbling. Hollowed-out shells that once housed lives, now serving as silent monuments to what has been lost. As you draw closer, the air thickens with more defined scents. Cordite, sharp and acrid, mixes with something unmistakably organic and putrid. It's the smell of decay, of flesh, of stagnant water, of 1,000 unwashed bodies, all mingling into a pungent, overwhelming miasma that assaults your nostrils. You gag, reflexively covering your mouth with a hand, but the smell penetrates anyway, clinging to your clothes, seeping into your very pores. This is the scent of the front, the signature odor of human suffering and death, and you realize with a sickening certainty that this is the smell you will carry with you, perhaps forever. It's not just a smell. It's a presence, an invisible, suffocating cloak that wraps itself around you, pulling you further into its grim embrace. The last vestiges of the civilian world melt away behind you, leaving you standing on the precipice of a different dimension. The chatter of birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant sounds of normal life are replaced by the constant grinding roar of the war machine. You are no longer just a person. You are a cog, a piece of flesh heading into the grinder, stripped of your individuality, your hopes, your past. All that matters now is the immediate present, the next step, the next breath, the next moment of survival. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and anticipation. You can feel the transformation beginning, the hardening of your resolve, the dulling of your senses, the shift into a mode of existence designed purely for endurance. This is the gate, you realize, to oblivion, and you are walking through it willingly or not. The rumors of rats, once dismissed as mere folklore, now take on a darker, more prophetic hue. If this is what humanity has done to itself, what monstrous companions might it breed in the darkness? The trench opens before you like a gaping wound in the earth, a jagged, convoluted scar stretching as far as the eye can see. You've seen diagrams, crude drawings, but nothing, absolutely nothing prepares you for the sheer, brutal reality of it. It's not just a ditch. It's a sprawling subterranean labyrinth, a man-made hell carved into the very bowels of the world. The entrance is a dark, narrow cut in the landscape, obscured by sandbags and camouflage, inviting you into its suffocating embrace. You hesitate for a moment, a primal instinct screaming at you to retreat, to flee from this unnatural tomb. But the men ahead of you are already disappearing into the gloom, their forms swallowed by the earth, leaving you no choice but to follow. You take a deep breath, steeling yourself, and step over the lip. Immediately, the world shifts. The sky, which moments ago was a vast, indifferent expanse, vanishes, replaced by a narrow, muddy slit above your head. The air becomes heavy, thick with a damp, earthy musk that is both suffocating and chilling. It's a smell you'll never forget, a blend of decay, stale sweat, urine, a faint, metallic tang of blood, and something else. Something indefinable, yet utterly pervasive, a scent of stagnant despair. It clings to your clothes, your hair, seeps into your skin, becoming a part of you. You try to breathe shallowly, but it's no use. Every inhalation draws the foul air deep into your lungs, coating your throat, making you feel perpetually on the verge of nausea. This is the air of the trench, and it will be your constant companion. The path beneath your feet is no longer solid ground, but a treacherous, viscous mud ankle-deep, sometimes knee-deep, that sucks at your boots with a relentless, insatiable hunger. It's a thick, clinging substance, a blend of earth, water, human waste, and unidentifiable organic matter. Every step is a Herculean effort, a battle against the grasping, squelching morass that threatens to pull you under. You slip, stumble, your hands instinctively reaching out for support, only to find the walls of the trench equally slick and slimy. The mud gets everywhere, splashed onto your uniform, smeared on your face, clinging to your rifle, seeping into your socks. It's cold, endlessly cold, a pervasive chill that penetrates your boots and gloves, numbing your extremities, turning your fingers and toes into icy blocks. You realize with a jolt that you will never truly be dry again. The claustrophobia hits you with a physical force, a crushing weight on your chest. The trench walls, carved from the earth, loom high above you, often reaching higher than your head, preventing any view of the surrounding landscape. You are trapped, enclosed, with only a sliver of grey sky visible, like a tantalizing, unreachable promise. The feeling of being buried alive is overwhelming, a constant gnawing anxiety in the pit of your stomach. You can hear the muffled sounds of the war above, the distant thuds, the occasional whistle and crack. But they feel disconnected, alien, like a world you once knew but can no longer access. This trench is your new reality, a self-contained universe of dirt and despair. As you navigate the winding path, you begin to observe the details of this subterranean existence. The walls, hastily reinforced with sandbags and planks, are crumbling in places, dripping with perpetual moisture. Wires, communication lines, and crude light fixtures where electricity dares to reach crisscross overhead, adding to the tangled, chaotic feel. The sandbags themselves, once pristine and filled with dry earth, are now bursting, spilling their contents, their fabric rotting and stained. Everywhere you look, there's evidence of decay, of struggle, of a desperate, losing battle against the elements and against time itself. You pass dugouts. Small, cramped alcoves carved into the trench walls, protected by more sandbags or corrugated iron. These are the soldiers' sleeping quarters, their only refuge from the open air. You glimpse figures huddled inside, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of a candle or a small, smoky lamp, their eyes wide and staring, lost in some private world of exhaustion and fear. The air within these dugouts, you imagine, must be even more stifling, more permeated with the scent of unwashed bodies and damp earth. There is no privacy, no real comfort here, only a slightly less exposed place to rest your weary bones. The constant drip, Drip, drip of water is a pervasive sound, echoing through the trench, a monotonous, maddening rhythm that underscores the relentless dampness. It's the sound of the earth weeping, of the rain seeping through, of the ever-present moisture that will lead to trench foot, to chills, to a constant, nagging discomfort that becomes a part of your very being. You try to ignore it, but it's like a persistent whisper, a reminder that you are never truly dry, never truly warm, never truly safe from the encroaching damp. And then you start to notice them. Not directly, not yet, but their presence is undeniable. A flicker in your peripheral vision, a shadow darting across a dimly lit corner. A faint rustling sound like dry leaves, but more organic, more insistent. You tell yourself it's nothing, the wind, your imagination, the settling of the earth. But the unease builds, a prickle on the back of your neck. You catch a glint of something small and dark disappearing into a crack in the wall, or scurrying across a discarded ration tin. It's too quick to identify, but the impression it leaves is indelible. The smell, too, begins to deepen, to take on a new, more specific undertone. Beyond the general stench of decay and human effluvia, there's a musky, animalistic odor, faint at first, then growing stronger, permeating the very fabric of the trench. It's the smell of fur, of waste, of a teeming, unseen population that lives alongside you, a hidden army that shares your miserable existence. This is the scent of the rats, you realize. The same creatures from the grim rumors. Now no longer just stories, but an undeniable, horrifying reality. You continue your slow, arduous journey through the trench. The claustrophobia and the stench assaulting your senses relentlessly. The world above seems an impossibly distant memory, a place of light and air and cleanliness that you may never see again. You are fully immersed now, swallowed whole by the earth's maw, a willing or unwilling participant in this grotesque spectacle. Your mind begins to adapt, to shut down the parts that scream for comfort, for cleanliness, for escape. A grim acceptance settles over you, a realization that this is your life now, this endless, muddy, stinking hole in the ground. And the rats, you understand, will be your closest, most constant companions. You haven't seen them clearly yet, but their presence is already an undeniable, horrifying weight on your soul, a promise of the intimacy of vermin that is yet to come. The descent is complete. You are in. Darkness falls like a heavy shroud, thick and suffocating, swallowing the last vestiges of the narrow slit of sky above. The trench, already a realm of shadow and gloom, plunges into an almost absolute blackness, broken only by the feeble flicker of a few distant candles or the brief, stark glare of a star shell arching high above, momentarily illuminating the ravaged landscape with an eerie phosphorescent glow. You are huddled in a dugout, a cramped, damp alcove carved into the trench wall, sharing the suffocating space with several other men. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, stale tobacco, and that ever-present cloying stench of damp earth and decay. Your uniform is still wet, clinging uncomfortably to your skin, and a deep, bone-aching cold has settled into your core, seemingly impervious to the thin blanket you clutch around yourself. Sleep, you quickly realize, is a luxury. Every muscle aches, every joint protests, and the gnawing anxiety in your stomach refuses to abate. Your ears, sharpened by the constant threat of unseen danger, pick up every sound. The distant rumble of artillery, a rhythmic thudding that vibrates through the earth, a constant reminder of the war's proximity. The occasional crack of a rifle, a sharp, sudden punctuation in the monotonous drone. The coughs and murmurs of your trenchmates, their restless movements as they, too, struggle against the discomfort and the encroaching terror. But beneath all these familiar sounds of the front, another symphony begins to emerge, a subtle, insidious orchestra of the unseen. It starts as a faint rustling, a dry, papery whisper from deep within the earth walls around you. You dismiss it at first, attributing it to the wind or the shifting soil, or simply your overactive imagination. But it persists, a delicate scratching, a hurried pattering, growing steadily more distinct, more insistent. It's too regular, too organic to be anything but living creatures. You hold your breath, straining your ears, your heart beginning to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against your ribs. The sound seems to come from everywhere, from the very fabric of your temporary shelter, from the earth beneath you, from the sandbags above. Then you see it, a flicker of movement in the furthest, darkest corner of the dugout, just at the edge of the weak candlelight. A shadow detaches itself from the wall, a swift, dark shape that darts across the muddy floor, disappearing into a crack before you can fully register its form. Your breath catches in your throat. It was too fast, too low to the ground to be anything but what the rumors described. The rat. Your blood runs cold, a sudden, icy wave washing over you, leaving you trembling. It's not just a rumor anymore. It's a living, breathing, palpable reality, sharing your meager space, lurking just beyond the reach of your sight. The initial sighting is just the beginning. Once your eyes and ears are attuned, you begin to perceive them everywhere. The rustling grows louder, more confident, no longer just whispers, but distinct, scuttling sounds, the scratching of tiny claws on wood and earth. You hear them moving between the sandbags, their bodies brushing against the coarse fabric, a soft, repulsive rasping. You hear them behind the corrugated iron sheets, a faint, metallic scraping. They are in the walls, beneath the floorboards, if you're lucky enough to have any. Above your head, a pervasive, unseen multitude. The sheer numbers become apparent, not just one or two, but a whole colony, an army of darkness that has claimed this trench as their domain. You strain your eyes in the dim light, trying to pierce the gloom to catch another glimpse, and you do. This time it's bolder, larger. A creature emerges from a hole near your feet, its beady eyes glinting in the faint light, its long, hairless tail trailing behind it. It pauses for a moment, sniffing the air, its whiskers twitching, its small, pointed head turning from side to side, assessing its surroundings with an unnerving intelligence. You are frozen, a mixture of disgust and primal fear gripping you. It's bigger than you imagined, far bigger than the house mice you might have seen back home. This is a formidable rodent, a creature fattened on the grim bounty of the trenches. It moves with a quick, jerky gait, a low-slung, repulsive mass of fur and teeth before vanishing under a pile of discarded equipment. The realization sinks in, heavy and sickening. You are sharing your personal space, your last refuge with these loathsome creatures. They are not just outside, they are inside, everywhere. They live in the very walls that protect you from the shells, they traverse the same muddy floors you walk on, they breathe the same foul air. The thought is deeply unsettling, a profound violation of your sense of sanctuary. Your skin crawls with a phantom itch, an imagined brush of their fur against your flesh, and you instinctively pull your blanket tighter, a futile attempt to create a barrier against their insidious presence. As the night deepens, their boldness increases. The scuttling sounds become more brazen, more confident. You hear them fighting amongst themselves, sharp squeaks and chittering noises echoing from the darkest recesses of the dugout. Sometimes a rat will dart right across the open floor, a fleeting shadow, utterly unafraid of the human occupants. You see their eyes like tiny, malevolent pinpricks of light reflecting the candle flame, observing you with a detached, ancient curiosity. They move with an unsettling speed and agility, disappearing and reappearing as if by magic, their movements blurring the line between reality and hallucination in your sleep-deprived state. The sheer volume of sound is what truly gets to you. It's not just occasional, it's constant, a relentless chorus of scratching, squeaking, and pattering that underlies all other sounds. It invades your thoughts, becoming a maddening rhythm that drills into your brain. You close your eyes, trying desperately to find some sleep, but the sounds are magnified in the darkness, playing tricks on your mind. You imagine them crawling over your face, burrowing into your clothes, gnawing on your boots. Every rustle, every creak of the wood, every soft sigh from a trenchmate is immediately interpreted as the sound of a rat, sending a fresh jolt of fear through your body. The cold, the damp, the hunger, the fear of shelling. These are all parts of the trench experience. But the rats add another deeply personal layer of horror. They are not a distant enemy, but an intimate, repulsive companion, an ever-present reminder of the degradation of your surroundings. Their presence is a constant assault on your senses, a psychological warfare waged not by the enemy, but by the very environment you inhabit. You feel your resolve beginning to fray, your mind struggling to cope with this pervasive living infestation. The whispers in the wall are not just sounds. They are a constant, insidious reminder that you are no longer at the top of the food chain, that in this desolate, war-torn landscape, humanity is just another fleeting, vulnerable presence, sharing its space with an ancient, thriving population of vermin. This is your first night, and you know with a chilling certainty that it will not be your last encounter with these masters of the dark. The sun, a pale, indifferent disk, begins its slow ascent, casting a wan, watery light into the trench. You've survived your first night, but the exhaustion is profound, a heavy cloak that weighs down every limb, every thought. Your eyes are gritty, bloodshot, tracing the outlines of every shadow, still hyper-alert from the incessant symphony of scuttling. As the light strengthens, you realize the magnitude of the problem isn't just auditory, it's visual. The muddy floor, once an indistinct blur in the darkness, is now crisscrossed with tiny, distinct tracks. Droppings, small and black, dot the ground, nestled in corners, clinging to sandbags, a pervasive testament to their constant presence. The air, already stale and fetid, now carries a sharper, musky tang, the unmistakable scent of rat. Breakfast arrives, a meagre affair of hardtack biscuits and a mug of lukewarm bitter tea, delivered with a casual indifference by a weary-looking corporal. You clutch your tin mug, the warmth a fleeting comfort against the pervasive cold. The biscuit, dry and bland, requires effort to chew, but its sustenance, a small victory against the gnawing hunger that has become your baseline as state. You eat slowly, savoring each mouthful, acutely aware of how precious this fuel is. But even this simple act of eating becomes a battle, a test of vigilance against your unseen companions. You've heard the stories. Of course, the grim jokes about sharing rations, about turning your back for a second, only to find your biscuit gone, a hole gnawed in your bread, a greasy mark on your cheese. Now you understand the necessity of this hyper-awareness. Your eyes dart around, scanning the dugout, the trench floor, the edges of the sandbags. You eat quickly, consciously, not allowing your attention to waver. Every rustle, every movement makes you tense, your hand instinctively reaching for your food, clutching it closer as if protecting a priceless treasure. Suddenly a flicker. A rat, bolder than the ones you saw in the night, emerges from a gap in the sandbags near your feet. It's a truly formidable creature, fat and sleek, its fur matted with mud, its eyes like tiny black beads. It doesn't skitter away immediately. Instead, it pauses, watching you with an unnerving directness, its whiskers twitching, its nose sniffing the air, clearly aware of the food in your hand. A wave of profound revulsion washes over you, a mix of disgust and disbelief at its audacity. You kick out instinctively, a clumsy, ineffective gesture, and it darts away, disappearing as quickly as it appeared, but not without leaving its mark. The memory of its gaze, its almost insolent confidence, lingers, a prickle on your skin. Protecting your rations becomes a full-time job. Every soldier has developed their own techniques, their own desperate strategies against the relentless onslaught. Some hang their haversacks from the dugout ceiling on lengths of wire, hoping the rats can't climb or chew through it. Others try to store food in sealed tins, but the rats, with their powerful teeth, are often able to gnaw their way through surprisingly tough materials. You watch a veteran carefully wrap his biscuit in multiple layers of cloth, then place it inside his metal mess tin, and finally wedge it tightly between two sandbags as if performing a sacred ritual. The sheer effort, the meticulousness required to protect a single dry biscuit speaks volumes about the constant, insidious battle being waged. The rats are audacious, driven by an insatiable hunger and a profound lack of fear for humans who, in this environment, are often too weary, too shell-shocked, or too preoccupied with survival against the enemy to truly focus on vermin control. They are everywhere, constantly probing, constantly seeking opportunities. You leave your mug down for a moment to tie your bootlace, and when you look back, there's a rat at the rim, its nose dipping into the dregs of your tea, leaving behind a greasy, repulsive film. The tea, once a comfort, is now tainted, undrinkable. The frustration is immense, a simmering anger born of constant deprivation and violation. The psychological toll of this constant vigilance is immense. You are perpetually on edge, your senses strained, always listening, always watching, not just for the enemy, but for these tiny, furry adversaries. The casualness with which they approach, their complete disregard for your presence, is demoralizing. It feels as though they view you as just another part of the trench landscape, another resource to be exploited, another obstacle to be circumvented. Your own humanity feels diminished in their presence, reduced to the level of a struggling animal fighting for scraps. Food, which was once a source of pleasure, a communal activity, becomes a grim, solitary act of defense. You eat quickly, almost furtively, your eyes sweeping the perimeter, your body tensed for an attack. The joy of a hot meal, a rare luxury, is often overshadowed by the anxiety of keeping it safe from contamination. You see men sharing stories, grimly humorous anecdotes, about rats absconding with entire loaves of bread, dragging them into their subterranean tunnels, or gnawing through the straps of a haversack to get at the contents. Laughter, when it comes, is hollow, a desperate attempt to lighten the suffocating weight of their shared predicament. The contamination of food is a constant threat, and often an unavoidable reality. A discarded crust, gnawed by a rat, could carry disease. A pile of untouched rations left overnight might be discovered in the morning with telltale teeth marks and droppings. Hunger, however, often overrides disgust. You witness men cutting away the contaminated parts, trying to salvage what they can, a desperate act born of starvation. The line between what is edible and what is contaminated blurs in the face of persistent hunger, and the rats, in their relentless pursuit of sustenance, push you closer and closer to that unsanitary edge. The rats aren't just taking your food, they're taking your peace of mind. They are a constant living reminder of the unsanitary, degraded conditions, a physical manifestation of the fact that you are living in a cesspit. Every time you see one, every time you hear one, it reinforces the grim reality of your situation, the complete absence of normalcy, cleanliness, or safety. They are a profound, visceral insult to your dignity, turning your most basic human need, sustenance, into a desperate, unending battle against a pervasive, unseen army. You cling to your meager rations, not just for the food itself, but as a small, desperate act of defiance against the overwhelming forces of degradation, both human and animal, that threaten to consume you entirely. The chilling reality of the trenches extends beyond the mud and the shells, beyond the hunger and the damp, into a realm of horror that fundamentally alters your perception of life and death. You've seen death now too many times. Your eyes, once innocent, have witnessed the instantaneous brutality of artillery, the slow, agonizing end of a sniper's victim, the quiet resignation of men succumbing to disease. Each loss is a fresh scar on your psyche, a further erosion of your humanity. But then there is the other kind of death, the one that lingers, the one that the rats claim as their own. You're out on a wiring party, or perhaps simply moving through a quieter section of the trench system, a section that has seen heavy fighting recently, but is now temporarily still. The air here is different, heavier. The smell of decay is sharper, more concentrated, not just the general miasma of the trench, but the specific, sickeningly sweet stench of human flesh in its various stages of decomposition. It clings to you, permeates your uniform, makes your stomach churn with a profound nausea that threatens to overwhelm you. You instinctively cover your mouth and nose with a damp cloth, but the smell penetrates anyway, reaching deep into your lungs, leaving a metallic taste in your mouth, and then you see it. A shape half buried in the churned earth of the parapet, a twisted, broken form that was once a man. He lies in an unnatural position, his uniform ripped, caked in mud and dried blood. His face, if visible, would be a mask of terror or peace, but often it's already obscured, gnawed away by something utterly monstrous. And that's when you see them, the rats. Not one or two, but a teeming, squirming mass, a living, furry blanket draped over the fallen soldier. They are gorging themselves, silently, efficiently, their tiny bodies heaving, their sharp teeth tearing at flesh, feasting on what was once a human being, a son, a brother, a friend. Your blood runs cold, a deep, primal revulsion seizing your entire being. This is the ultimate desecration, the most profound insult to the human form. To fall in battle is one thing. To be consumed by vermin, to have your body reduced to a feast for these loathsome creatures, is another horror entirely. You want to scream, to retch, to turn away, but you are frozen, utterly transfixed by the grotesque spectacle. The sheer number of them, their casualness, their complete disregard for your presence, is what truly shocks you. They barely acknowledge your approach, so absorbed are they in their macabre banquet. Their beady eyes, when they do flicker up, hold no fear, only a brief, annoyed curiosity before they return to their gruesome task. The sight is indelible, burned into your memory with a terrifying clarity. It's not just the visual, it's the sound, a faint, tearing, slurping sound that turns your stomach inside out. It's the sheer scale of the infestation, the realization that these creatures are not just living alongside you, but are actively consuming the fallen, acting as the ultimate, most efficient cleanup crew of the battlefield. The line between life and death blurs, and the rats become the horrifying bridge, connecting the living soldiers to their inevitable, unsung end. You watch, helpless as a larger rat, engorged and sleek, detaches itself from the feast, its belly distended, its fur matted with blood. It pauses, then begins to meticulously clean its whiskers, its small tongue darting out, removing traces of its gruesome meal. The image is profoundly disturbing, a cold, clinical act of consumption, devoid of any emotion, any recognition of the tragedy it represents. This is not a hunt. It is a harvest, a methodical reaping of the ultimate crop of war. The experience leaves you profoundly shaken. It's one thing to hear the rumors, to see a rat scurry across your feet. It's another entirely to witness them feasting on your comrades, on those who have fallen. It imbues them with a new, terrifying significance. They are no longer just pests. They are scavengers of the dead, living symbols of the brutal, dehumanizing nature of the war. Your own mortality becomes terrifyingly tangible, your potential end stripped of any dignity, reduced to a meal for the teeming masses of the trench. The psychological impact is immense. You begin to look at every fallen man, every unrecovered body, with a new, horrifying understanding. You know what is happening to them, even if you can't see it. The image of the rats feasting becomes a pervasive undertone to every casualty, every death. It fuels a deeper revulsion, a more desperate fight for survival, a grim determination not to end up like that, not to become another nameless meal for the silent scavengers. This macabre reality shapes your perception of the trench itself. It's not just a defensive structure, it's a charnel house, a vast open grave where the dead mingle with the living and the rats move freely between both. They are the constant, visible link between the two states, a reminder that death is never far, and that even in death there is no escape from the relentless degradation of this war. The rats embody the ultimate indignity, the final insult to those who have sacrificed everything. Their somber feast is a constant, horrifying tableau etched into your memory, shaping your nightmares, and forever tainting your understanding of war and death. The relentless cold, the pervasive damp, the constant lack of sleep, and the meager, unappetizing rations have taken their toll on your body. You feel perpetually run down, your immune system struggling to cope with the relentless assault. Your skin is clammy, your eyes perpetually tired, and a deep, rattling cough has settled in your chest, a common companion in the trenches. But beyond the obvious ailments of exposure and exhaustion, there's another, more insidious threat that whispers through the trenches, carried on tiny. Scurrying feet, disease. The rats are not just scavengers of the dead and thieves of your food. They are vectors, living conduits for a myriad of unseen pathogens. Their droppings, their urine, their very fur are contaminated, a constant source of infection in an environment already teeming with bacteria and filth. You've seen men succumb to it. A sudden, inexplicable fever, violent chills, an agonizing cough that rips through their lungs, or a dysentery that drains them of every ounce of strength, leaving them hollowed-out shells of their former selves. The medics, overwhelmed and under-equipped, can do little but offer comfort and, in severe cases, the promise of evacuation to a field hospital, a distant hope that often comes too late. Trench fever is a particular scourge, a debilitating illness characterized by severe headaches, aching muscles, painful shins, and a high fever that can last for weeks. It's rarely fatal, but it renders a soldier utterly useless, sending them spiraling into a debilitating cycle of pain and exhaustion. And the culprit? The body louse, a tiny insect that thrives in the unwashed, overcrowded conditions of the trenches. But the rats, in their constant movement through the trench, their close proximity to both humans and the sources of infection, are believed to play a role in spreading the disease, carrying infected lice from one area to another, from one soldier to the next. The thought of these tiny, blood-sucking parasites, transmitted by a creature that crawls over you in your sleep, is enough to make your skin crawl with a deeper revulsion. Then there's typhus, a far more deadly disease carried by the same lice. Its symptoms are similar to trench fever, but far more severe. High fever, severe headache, muscle pain, and a distinctive rash. A diagnosis of typhus in the trenches is often a death sentence, a slow, agonizing slide into delirium and eventual demise. The rats again are implicated, their movements, connecting the living and the dead, the infected and the healthy, creating a grim biological highway for the spread of these invisible killers. You try to keep yourself as clean as possible, scratching vigorously at the constant itching of lice bites, but it's a losing battle. The sheer impossibility of maintaining hygiene in this environment makes you a walking host for both the vermin and the diseases they carry. Dysentery is another common horror, an epidemic that sweeps through the trenches with terrifying regularity. The constant exposure to contaminated food and water, the lack of proper latrines, the pervasive presence of human waste all contribute to its spread, and the rats, crawling through the latrines, through discarded food, through the mud, act as perfect transporters of the bacteria that cause this debilitating illness. You witness men reduced to shivering wrecks, barely able to drag themselves to the latrine, their bodies ravaged by constant diarrhea and vomiting. The weakness, the dehydration, the sheer loss of dignity in such a public and unsanitary struggle is a sight that haunts you. The rats are everywhere in these moments, drawn to the waste, a silent, sickening witness to human suffering and a direct conduit for its continuation. You become hyper-aware of every cut, every scratch on your skin. A rat bite, a seemingly innocuous wound, becomes a source of intense anxiety. What unseen bacteria might their teeth carry? What diseases lurk in their saliva? The fear of infection of a wound festering in the damp, muddy environment is ever present. You clean your hands as best you can with the meager supplies available, but it feels futile, a desperate gesture against an overwhelming tide of filth. Every sensation, every ache, every new cough sends a jolt of fear through you, an immediate link to the rats and the unseen dangers they bring. The psychological impact of this pervasive threat is immense. It adds another layer of terror to an already horrifying existence.
You're not just fighting the enemy, you're fighting an invisible foe, carried by the very creatures that share your space, that invade your sleep, that steal your food.
It's a constant, nagging anxiety that gnaws at your peace of mind. The rats are no longer just a nuisance. They are agents of death, furry harbingers of sickness and suffering. Their movements, once merely irritating, now carry a sinister undertone, each scuttle a potential step towards your own physical collapse. You watch men become almost obsessive in their attempts to avoid contact, to keep their food covered, to kill every rat they see. But it's a futile Sisyphean task. The numbers are too great, the environment too conducive to their survival and proliferation. The rats are an integral part of the trench ecosystem, a thriving, disease-ridden population that lives and dies alongside the soldiers, often outliving them. Their insidious role as carriers of disease is a constant, invisible threat. A persistent reminder that even in the absence of enemy fire, the trench itself is trying to kill you, and the rats are its most efficient, most repulsive agents. This unseen peril, carried on tiny paws, becomes as terrifying as any shell or bullet, a silent, pervasive killer that preys on your weakened body and terrorized mind. The rats are no longer a surprise. They are a fact of life, as omnipresent and inescapable as the mud and the shells. Their constant presence, their audacious scavenging, their role as carriers of disease, all fuel a simmering rage within the men. This isn't just about survival against the enemy. It's about a desperate personal war against the vermin that infest every inch of your existence. This is a war within a war, a futile,
unending battle against an enemy that outnumbers you, outmaneuvers you,
and thrives on the very conditions that are slowly killing you. You witness the various methods employed in this grim eradication effort, each more desperate and ultimately hopeless than the last. Bayonets designed for combat against men are often used for impromptu rat hunting. A soldier driven by a sudden burst of rage or a prolonged period of irritation will lunge at a scurrying rat, attempting to pin it to the muddy floor or stab it against a sandbag. The spectacle is often gruesome, the bayonet piercing the small body, the rat's frantic, dying squeals, the dark blood staining the already filthy earth. But for every rat killed, 10 more seem to appear, their numbers barely dented by these sporadic acts of violence. The bayonet, meant for the gloried enemy, is now stained with the blood of a creature of filth, a stark reminder of the degrading realities of this conflict. Clubs, improvised from broken rifle stocks or lengths of wood, become another weapon of choice. Men lie in wait, patiently, grimly, for a rat to emerge from its hiding place, then bring the club down with a sudden, savage blow. The thud of impact, the sickening crunch of bone and flesh becomes another background sound in the trench's macabre symphony. There's a grim satisfaction in a successful kill, a brief, fleeting sense of victory against an overwhelming foe. But this satisfaction is quickly replaced by the realization that it's a drop in the ocean, a single victory in a war that cannot be won. The rats simply breed faster than you can kill them, their populations exploding in the rich feeding grounds of the trenches. Some men bring dogs to the front, specifically terrier breeds known for their ratting prowess. These dogs, with their keen senses and natural hunting instincts, are a brief source of hope. You watch them, these energetic, wiry creatures, darting through the trenches, their tails wagging furiously as they sniff out their prey. When they corner a rat, the scene is a blur of teeth and fur, a frantic, yelping maelstrom of violence. A good ratting dog can kill dozens in a single session, a brief, exhilarating triumph over the infestation. But even the most determined dog eventually tires or succumbs to the same diseases that plague the men, or simply becomes overwhelmed by the sheer, endless numbers. The dogs, too, become part of the trench's despair, their initial enthusiasm fading into a weary, mud-caked resignation. Traps are set, crude devices of wire and wood baited with scraps of food. You see them along the trench walls, in dugouts everywhere a rat might roam. Sometimes they are successful, catching a few unwary rodents. The sight of a trapped rat, frantically struggling, its eyes wide with terror, is often met with a grim satisfaction by the soldiers. They are dispatched quickly, a swift end to their suffering, another small victory. But like all other methods, the traps barely make a dent. The rats are too cunning, too numerous, too quick to learn. Many traps are simply raided for their bait. The rats outsmarting the desperate attempts of their human counterparts. The futility of it all eventually sinks in, a crushing weight that dampens even the most determined efforts. You kill 10, 100, 1,000, but their numbers seem to multiply exponentially. For every rat you see, there are dozens, hundreds more, hidden in the labyrinthine tunnels they've burrowed beneath the trench system. They are the true masters of this underground realm, utterly adapted to its filth, its darkness, its abundant supply of dead flesh and discarded food. They thrive where humans barely survive, a constant living testament to the degradation of the trench environment. A dark, grim humor begins to develop around the rat problem. Soldiers tell exaggerated stories of monstrous rats, of creatures the size of small dogs, of their cunning and their audacity. There's a camaraderie forged in this shared battle, a sense of collective despair and resilience. You hear men betting on how many rats a dog can kill or on who can dispatch the largest one with a single blow. It's a way to cope, a way to laugh in the face of an insurmountable horror, to briefly reclaim a sliver of control in a world where control is an illusion. But beneath the grim humor, the frustration simmers. The constant drain on your energy, the endless vigilance, the knowledge that your efforts are largely pointless, it all adds to the profound sense of hopelessness. You are fighting a war you can never win against an enemy that is both repulsive and strangely resilient. The rats become a symbol of the larger war itself. An endless, bloody, frustrating grind, a battle against forces beyond your control, where ultimate victory often feels like an impossible dream. This war within a war against the scuttling, squealing, ever-present hordes becomes another layer of the psychological torment, another constant reminder of the dehumanizing, degrading reality of the trenches. The exhaustion in the trenches is absolute, a heavy, numbing weight that presses down on your eyelids, pulls at your limbs and clouds your thoughts. After days of ceaseless vigilance, of cold, damp, and constant fear, your body screams for rest, for sleep, for even a momentary escape from the nightmare. You finally collapse into your designated spot in the dugout, often little more than a muddy niche in the wall, perhaps with a thin, sodden blanket and a ground sheet beneath you. Your body aches, your mind is a jumble of anxieties and images of destruction, but the sheer physical depletion eventually wins out. dragging you down into a shallow, fitful slumber. But even sleep offers no true escape. The trench continues its relentless assault, not with shells or bullets, but with its more insidious, intimate horrors. You are barely asleep, lost in that restless, half-conscious state between waking and dreaming when you feel it. A light, tickling sensation on your leg just above the top of your boot. Your eyes snap open, your heart immediately pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. You freeze, straining your senses in the oppressive darkness. Nothing. You tell yourself it was just a fold in your blanket, a phantom itch, your imagination playing tricks on you in the dead of night. You close your eyes again, trying to reclaim the fleeting oblivion of sleep, and then it comes again. This time, higher up, on your chest, a distinct, light weight, a delicate movement of tiny claws. A wave of profound revulsion washes over you, a sickening realization that immediately banishes any thought of sleep. It's a rat. It's crawling on you. Your body tenses, every muscle coiling, a scream caught in your throat. You lie utterly still, your breath held, terrified that any sudden movement will startle it, make it bite, or send it scuttling into some more intimate part of your uniform. The sensation is utterly repulsive, a profound violation of your personal space, your last sanctuary. The rats become a symbol of the war itself. Relentless, pervasive, insidious, and ultimately unconquerable. They embody the futility of your struggle, the overwhelming power of the forces arrayed against you, both human and natural. Battling them is a microcosm of the larger war, a constant, grinding effort with little hope of ultimate victory. This realization breeds a deep sense of powerlessness, a despair that seeps into your bones, affecting your morale, your will to fight, your very sense of purpose. When you witness a fellow soldier break, succumbing to shell shock, a term now used to describe the profound psychological trauma, it's often not just the shells that are responsible. It's the cumulative effect of everything, the fear, the cold, the hunger, the loss, and yes, the rats. The constant, insidious presence of these creatures, the profound disgust they inspire, the violation of personal space, the relentless attack on your food and your sanity all contribute to the erosion of the mind. The psychological echoes of the rats, their relentless silent siege, leave indelible marks, scars on the soul that may never truly heal. Even long after the war itself has faded into memory, after an eternity in the line, a blessed order finally comes. You're being pulled out. A rotation, 2 maybe 3 days behind the lines. The news spreads like wildfire through the trench, sparking a flicker of something akin to hope in the dulled eyes of the men. A chance to escape the mud, the shells, the cold, and for a precious few days the rats. As you slog your way back along the communication trenches, away from the front, a gradual shift occurs. The smell of decay lessens. The distant rumble of artillery becomes more muted. The omnipresent squelch of mud beneath your feet seems slightly less profound. A fragile sense of relief begins to unfurl in your chest. A tentative easing of the tension that has been your constant companion. You arrive at a rear encampment, a collection of tents or dilapidated barns, still rudimentary, still far from civilization, but a world away from the immediate horrors of the front line. The promise of hot food, a clean change of clothes, and perhaps even a real bed, or at least a less muddy patch of straw, feels like an impossible luxury. You strip off your uniform, its fabric stiff with dried mud, its threads permeated with the stench of the trenches, the damp earth, the human waste, the unmistakable musky tang of rats. The thought of getting clean, truly clean, after weeks of relentless filth, is almost overwhelming. You wash. A bucket of cold, lukewarm water, perhaps a sliver of rough soap. It's not a proper bath, but the sensation of water sluicing away the grime, the feeling of your skin being scrubbed, is a revelation. You scrub your hands until they're red raw, trying to eradicate the last traces of mud and the imagined touch of rats. You try to wash your hair, though it feels a hopeless task, the grime seemingly embedded in every strand. The brief physical act of cleansing is a desperate attempt to wash away not just the dirt, but the indelible stain of the trench itself. Dressed in freshly laundered, or at least less dirty, clothes, you feel a fleeting sense of normalcy. The air here, though still carrying the distant scent of the war, is undeniably fresher, cleaner. You can stand upright without having to worry about an incoming shell. You can walk without your boots being sucked into the grasping mud.
There's a brief, fragile moment of respite, a tiny window where you can almost forget the horrors you've just endured.
You eat a hot meal, perhaps a stew or some boiled vegetables, and the warmth, the flavor, feels like a forgotten pleasure. The food isn't guarded with the same fierce intensity. The immediate threat of rats is diminished, though not entirely gone. But the trenches and their pervasive inhabitants have left their mark, a deep,
lingering stain that even this brief respite cannot fully erase.
You find yourself constantly scanning your surroundings, your eyes darting into shadows, expecting to see a quick, dark shape. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of wood, every subtle movement in your peripheral vision makes you tense, your heart rate quickening, your body preparing for an encounter with the unseen. The phantom itch, the imagined sensation of tiny claws on your skin, persists, a constant, irritating reminder of the nightmarish crawls. You might wake in the middle of the night, convinced you heard a scuttling sound, your heart pounding, only to realize you were in a relatively safe, rat-free environment. The rats have invaded your mind as much as they invaded your trench. When you walk, you find yourself instinctively avoiding discarded debris, stepping carefully around any dark object, conditioned by weeks of navigating a rat-infested landscape. You might even find yourself unconsciously clutching your imaginary rations, protecting them from an invisible threat. The sounds of the rear, though quieter, still carry echoes of the front. The distant thud of artillery is now a background hum, but it's still there, a constant whisper of the chaos you left behind, a reminder that your respite is temporary. You try to talk to your comrades, to engage in banter, to share stories. But even in these conversations, the rats inevitably intrude. Grim jokes are exchanged, horrifying anecdotes shared, a bonding over the shared trauma of the vermin. The laughter is often hollow, a desperate attempt to process the deeply unsettling experiences. You find yourself describing the size of them, the audacity, the way they feasted on the dead, and the vividness of your descriptions, the visceral horror in your voice,
reveals the depth of the mark they've left. The thought of going back, of returning to the muddy, rat-infested hole is a constant, suffocating dread.
This brief glimpse of something approaching normalcy only amplifies the horror of what awaits. The relief of being out of the line is tempered by the knowledge that it's only temporary, that you are merely recharging your batteries for another round in the hellish arena. The rats, in their pervasive absence, become even more powerful symbols of what you've escaped and what you will inevitably return to. Even in these fleeting moments of respite, the stain of the trenches and the profound intimacy with their most repulsive inhabitants clings to you. It's in the way you hold yourself, the haunted look in your eyes, the jumpiness of your nerves. You may be physically out of the line, but the trenches and their rats are still deeply embedded within you, a constant, insidious reminder of the harrowing reality that will soon reclaim you. This is not escape. It is merely a temporary reprieve, a brief, fragile interlude before the nightmare begins anew. The relative quiet, the oppressive stillness that sometimes settles over the trenches, is often a cruel deception, a brief, held breath before the storm. You've learned to read the signs, the sudden, unnatural silence of the birds, if any dare to linger, the subtle shift in the wind, the almost imperceptible tremor in the earth.
And then it begins.
A distant, low rumbling, growing steadily louder, quickly transforming into a deafening roar that obliterates all other sound. Incoming. Artillery. The world explodes around you. The trench, your flimsy refuge, shakes violently, as if a giant hand is gripping it, trying to tear it apart. The sky becomes a terrifying canvas of fire and smoke, punctuated by the blinding flashes of exploding shells.
Earth, mud, shrapnel, and the dismembered fragments of men and material rain down upon you, a deadly shower of destruction.
You press yourself against the muddy wall of the dugout, your hands clasped over your head, your body curled into a fetal position, instinctively trying to make yourself as small and as insignificant as possible. The roar is overwhelming, a physical force that vibrates through your very bones, threatening to rupture your eardrums, to split your skull. In this maelstrom of destruction, in the midst of this terrifying fusion of iron and flesh, the rats appear.
Not just one or two, but suddenly everywhere.
The sheer force of the explosions, the vibrations through the earth, drive them from their deep, subterranean burrows, sending them scurrying in panicked hordes. You glimpse them in the flickering light of the explosions, dark shapes darting across the muddy floor, their sleek bodies glistening with damp, their beady eyes wide with a primal terror that mirrors your own. They are just as desperate, just as disoriented by the chaos.
Frantically seeking any escape, any refuge from the iron storm, they run over you, not caring.
Not even seeming to notice your presence in their blind terror.
A cold, furry body brushes your arm. A sharp claw scratches your hand as a rat scrambles past.
Another runs across your back, its weight surprisingly substantial. In any other circumstance, this intimate touch would trigger a violent, disgusted reaction. But now, in the midst of the barrage, the overwhelming fear for your life supersedes even the profound revulsion of the rats. Your mind is too preoccupied with survival, with bracing for the next explosion, to fully process the violation. Yet the physical sensation, the chilling brush of their desperate flight, adds another grotesque layer to the horror of the shelling. The trench is not merely a place. It is an assault on every single one of your senses, a total immersion in a world of profound filth and degradation. Your arrival opened your eyes to its horrors, but as days bleed into weeks and weeks into months, your senses become both dulled by constant exposure and simultaneously hyper-aware of every nuance of its pervasive squalor. This is the symphony of filth, and you are trapped in its discordant, unending melody. First, the smell. It's an omnipresent, suffocating miasma that seems to cling to the very air you breathe, seeping into your clothes, your hair, your skin, becoming a part of you. It's a complex, multi-layered stench. The sharp, acrid bite of cordite and unexploded shells still lingering in the earth. The thick, cloying sweetness of decay, of unburied dead and putrefying organic matter. The metallic tang of dried blood, perpetually mixing with the damp earth. The sour, earthy smell of stagnant water and perpetually sodden mud. The unmistakable pungent reek of human waste from overcrowded, hastily dug latrines, overflowing with their grim contents. The sickly, sweet odor of gangrene and festering wounds emanating from the infirmaries or from men too stubborn or too far gone to report their ailments. The sour smell of unwashed bodies, of stale sweat and old urine, intensified by the constant damp and lack of any semblance of hygiene. The greasy, musky odor of rats, their droppings, their fur, a pervasive animalistic tang that underscores all other smells. It's a stench that permeates your dreams, a constant, sickening presence that makes you feel perpetually on the verge of nausea. You try to breathe shallowly to dull the assault, but it's futile. This smell is the air you breathe, the very essence of the trench, a constant reminder of the degradation you inhabit. Then, the sights. What little light penetrates the narrow confines of the trench reveals a landscape of utter desolation and grime. The mud is everywhere, a thick, viscous, omnipresent coating that clings to everything. It's not just brown. It's a mottled, shifting palette of greys, blacks, and sickly greens, a testament to the myriad organic and inorganic materials mixed within its depths. It cakes your boots, your uniform, smears the walls, fills every crack and crevice. You see discarded equipment half buried in its depths, shell casings, broken rifles, splintered wood, tarnished buttons, all slowly dissolving into the earth. The sandbags that line the parapet are bursting, rotting, their contents spilling out, stained with mold and grime. Water drips constantly from the overhead timbers, leaving glistening trails of slime. And everywhere, in the periphery, in the direct line of sight, you see the evidence of the rats, the tiny dark droppings, the greasy smears on the walls where their bodies have rubbed past, the telltale gnaw marks on wood and fabric, the momentary flash of a tail disappearing into a hole. These sights are not merely unpleasant, they are deeply disturbing, a constant visual confirmation of the profound squalor and the pervasive infestation that defines your existence. The sounds, too, become an intricate, horrifying symphony. Beyond the obvious cacophony of war, the distant thud of artillery, the sharp crack of rifles, the terrifying whine of incoming shells, the chatter of machine guns, there is the constant, underlying soundtrack of the trench itself. The ceaseless drip, drip, drip of water, a monotonous, maddening rhythm that underscores the relentless damp. The squelching, sucking sound of your boots pulling free from the mud with every arduous step. The low murmurs and coughs of your fellow soldiers, their restless movements in their cramped dugouts. And permeating it all, the incessant, insidious sounds of the rats, the frantic scuttling, the delicate scratching of claws, the dry, papery rustling from within the walls, the sudden squeaks and chittering of their territorial fights, the faint, sickening tearing sound as they feed on unseen horrors. These sounds are not just ambient noise, they are a constant psychological torment, invading your thoughts, disrupting your sleep, reminding you, every waking and sleeping moment, of the teeming, unseen life that surrounds you, that shares your space, that thrives on the very conditions that diminish your humanity. The feeling is one of perpetual damp, cold, and itching. Your uniform is always wet, clinging uncomfortably to your skin, chafing in places. The mud is always there, cold and slimy against your skin when you inevitably brush against it. The cold permeates your bones, a deep, aching chill that no fire, no blanket seems capable of truly dispelling.
And the itching. Oh, the itching.
From the body lice that infest every soldier, their bites leaving angry red welts, to the constant phantom sensation of rats crawling on you, the itching is a relentless, maddening torment. It drives you to frantic, almost desperate scratching, tearing at your own skin in a futile attempt to find relief. Your hands are perpetually grimy, your nails caked with mud, and the taste in your mouth is always metallic, foul, a bitter testament to the air you breathe and the food you eat. This sensory overload is a form of psychological torture. Your senses, initially shocked and repulsed, slowly begin to adapt, to dull, a defense mechanism against the constant assault. But even in this dulling, there is no true escape. The filth becomes your normal. The smell becomes the scent of home. The sounds become the lullaby of your nights. The rats become your constant, repulsive companions. This profound immersion in the symphony of filth is the ultimate dehumanizing experience of the trenches, a constant, visceral reminder that you are living not just in a war, but in a putrefying, teeming grave. The physical discomforts of the trenches, the cold, the damp, the hunger, The constant threat of enemy fire, the pervasive filth are crushing, but perhaps even more insidious, more profoundly damaging, is the relentless assault on your mind. The psychological echoes of this existence resonate deep within you, chipping away at your sanity, distorting your perceptions, leaving you fundamentally altered. And the rats, those omnipresent, scurrying companions, play a starring role in this mental siege. Initially, their presence evokes a powerful disgust, a primal revulsion that makes your skin crawl. You fight them with anger, with desperate attempts at eradication, with a fierce desire to reclaim some semblance of personal space and cleanliness. But as the days stretch into weeks and the weeks into months, the constant, futile battle begins to wear you down. The disgust slowly morphs into something else, a weary resignation, a dull ache of acceptance. You stop reacting with the same intensity. The sight of a rat gnawing on a discarded ration tin no longer elicits a gasp of horror, but a sigh of tired indifference. This desensitization, while a necessary survival mechanism, is itself a profound psychological wound, dulling your emotional responses, eroding your capacity for normal human reaction. The constant vigilance required to protect your food, to avoid stepping on them in the dark, to endure their nighttime crawls, creates a perpetual state of hyper-arousal. Your nerves are constantly frayed, stretched taut like violin strings, ready to snap at the slightest provocation.
Every rustle, every shadow, every unexpected sound sends a jolt of adrenaline through your body.
You are always on edge, always anticipating, always defending. This sustained state of high alert is exhausting, draining your mental reserves, making it impossible to truly relax, even in moments of relative calm. Your body is wired for fight or flight, but there is no flight, and the fight is endless. Then there's the paranoia. The rats are everywhere, unseen for the most part, but always heard, always felt. You begin to question your own perceptions. Was that a shadow moving, or just a trick of the light? Did you feel something brush against your leg, or was it just your damp uniform? The line between reality and hallucination blurs, particularly during the long, dark, sleep-deprived nights. You imagine them burrowing deeper, breeding faster, becoming bolder, invading not just your physical space, but your very thoughts. This constant suspicion, this inability to trust your own senses, eats away at your mental stability, fostering a deep-seated anxiety that becomes almost unbearable. Sleep, when it comes, is rarely restorative. Your dreams are invaded by the trenches, by the mud, by the constant threat of death, and always, always by the rats. You dream of their beady eyes, their twitching whiskers, their tiny claws scurrying over your skin. You wake in a cold sweat, your heart pounding, unable to shake the visceral sensations of the nightmare, convinced for a moment that the rats are still crawling on you. The line between sleep and wakefulness becomes a blurry, terrifying space where the horrors of the trench seep into your subconscious.
Offering no respite, no escape. The sheer degradation of it all.
The profound lack of dignity is a heavy burden on the mind. To live in filth, to share your most intimate moments with vermin, to constantly battle for scraps of food against an army of pests, it all chips away at your sense of self, at your identity as a human being. You are reduced to an animal fighting for survival in a pit, and the rats are a constant, living reminder of this brutal reality. The psychological impact of being forced to accept such an existence, to adapt to such conditions, is profound and lasting. Your worldview shifts, your understanding of what is normal or acceptable is irrevocably altered. The rats become a symbol of the war itself. Relentless, pervasive, insidious, and ultimately unconquerable. They embody the futility of your struggle, the overwhelming power of the forces arrayed against you, both human and natural. Battling them is a microcosm of the larger war, a constant grinding effort with little hope of ultimate victory. This realization breeds a deep sense of powerlessness. a despair that seeps into your bones, affecting your morale, your will to fight, your very sense of purpose when you witness a fellow soldier break, succumbing to shell shock, a term now used to describe the profound psychological trauma. It's often not just the shells that are responsible, it's the cumulative effect of everything: the fear, the cold, the hunger, the loss, and yes, the rats. The constant, insidious presence of these creatures, the profound disgust they inspire, the violation of personal space, the relentless attack on your food and your sanity all contribute to the erosion of the mind. The psychological echoes of the rats, their relentless silent siege, leave indelible marks, scars on the soul that may never truly heal, even long after the war itself has faded into memory. After an eternity in the line,
a blessed order finally comes. You're being pulled out.
a rotation, 2 maybe 3 days behind the lines. The news spreads like wildfire through the trench, sparking a flicker of something akin to hope in the dulled eyes of the men. A chance to escape the mud, the shells, the cold, and for a precious few days the rats. As you slog your way back along the communication trenches away from the front, a gradual shift occurs. The smell of decay lessens. The distant rumble of artillery becomes more muted. The omnipresent squelch of mud beneath your feet seems slightly less profound. A fragile sense of relief begins to unfurl in your chest. A tentative easing of the tension that has been your constant companion. You arrive at a rear encampment, a collection of tents or dilapidated barns, still rudimentary, still far from civilization, but a world away from the immediate horrors of the front line. The promise of hot food, a clean change of clothes, and perhaps even a real bed, or at least a less muddy patch of straw, feels like an impossible luxury. You strip off your uniform, its fabric stiff with dried mud, its threads permeated with the stench of the trenches, the damp earth, the human waste, the unmistakable musky tang of rats. The thought of getting clean, truly clean, after weeks of relentless filth, is almost overwhelming. You wash. A bucket of cold, lukewarm water, perhaps a sliver of rough soap. It's not a proper bath, but the sensation of water sluicing away the grime, the feeling of your skin being scrubbed, is a revelation. You scrub your hands until they're red raw, trying to eradicate the last traces of mud and the imagined touch of rats. You try to wash your hair, though it feels a hopeless task, the grime seemingly embedded in every strand. The brief physical act of cleansing is a desperate attempt to wash away not just the dirt, but the indelible stain of the trench itself. Dressed in freshly laundered, or at least less dirty, clothes, you feel a fleeting sense of normalcy. The air here, though still carrying the distant scent of the war, is undeniably fresher, cleaner. You can stand upright without having to worry about an incoming shell. You can walk without your boots being sucked into the grasping mud.
There's a brief, fragile moment of respite, a tiny window where you can almost forget the horrors you've just endured.
You eat a hot meal, perhaps a stew or some boiled vegetables, and the warmth, the flavor, feels like a forgotten pleasure. The food isn't guarded with the same fierce intensity. The immediate threat of rats is diminished, though not entirely gone. But the trenches and their pervasive inhabitants have left their mark, a deep,
lingering stain that even this brief respite cannot fully erase.
You find yourself constantly scanning your surroundings, your eyes darting into shadows, expecting to see a quick, dark shape. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of wood, every subtle movement in your peripheral vision makes you tense, your heart rate quickening, your body preparing for an encounter with the unseen. The phantom itch, the imagined sensation of tiny claws on your skin, persists, a constant, irritating reminder of the nightmarish crawls. You might wake in the middle of the night, convinced you heard a scuttling sound, your heart pounding, only to realize you were in a relatively safe, rat-free environment. The rats have invaded your mind as much as they invaded your trench. When you walk, you find yourself instinctively avoiding discarded debris, stepping carefully around any dark object. Conditioned by weeks of navigating a rat-infested landscape, you might even find yourself unconsciously clutching your imaginary rations, protecting them from an invisible threat. The sounds of the rear, though quieter, still carry echoes of the front. The distant thud of artillery is now a background hum, but it's still there, a constant whisper of the chaos you left behind, a reminder that your respite is temporary. You try to talk to your comrades, to engage in banter, to share stories. But even in these conversations, the rats inevitably intrude. Grim jokes are exchanged, horrifying anecdotes shared, a bonding over the shared trauma of the vermin. The laughter is often hollow, a desperate attempt to process the deeply unsettling experiences. You find yourself describing the size of them, the audacity, the way they feasted on the dead, and the vividness of your descriptions, the visceral horror in your voice,
reveals the depth of the mark they've left. The thought of going back, of returning to the muddy, rat-infested hole is a constant suffocating dread.
This brief glimpse of something approaching normalcy only amplifies the horror of what awaits. The relief of being out of the line is tempered by the knowledge that it's only temporary, that you are merely recharging your batteries for another round in the hellish arena. The rats, in their pervasive absence, become even more powerful symbols of what you've escaped and what you will inevitably return to. Even in these fleeting moments of respite, the stain of the trenches and the profound intimacy with their most repulsive inhabitants clings to you. It's in the way you hold yourself, the haunted look in your eyes, the jumpiness of your nerves. You may be physically out of the line, but the trenches and their rats are still deeply embedded within you, a constant, insidious reminder of the harrowing reality that will soon reclaim you. This is not escape. It is merely a temporary reprieve, a brief, fragile interlude before the nightmare begins anew. The relative quiet, the oppressive stillness that sometimes settles over the trenches, is often a cruel deception, a brief, held breath before the storm. You've learned to read the signs, the sudden, unnatural silence of the birds, if any dare to linger, the subtle shift in the wind, the almost imperceptible tremor in the earth.
And then it begins.
A distant, low rumbling, growing steadily louder, quickly transforming into a deafening roar that obliterates all other sound. Incoming. Artillery. The world explodes around you. The trench, your flimsy refuge, shakes violently, as if a giant hand is gripping it, trying to tear it apart. The sky becomes a terrifying canvas of fire and smoke, punctuated by the blinding flashes of exploding shells.
Earth, mud, shrapnel, and the dismembered fragments of men and material rain down upon you, a deadly shower of destruction.
You press yourself against the muddy wall of the dugout, your hands clasped over your head, your body curled into a fetal position, instinctively trying to make yourself as small and as insignificant as possible. The roar is overwhelming, a physical force that vibrates through your very bones, threatening to rupture your eardrums, to split your skull. In this maelstrom of destruction, in the midst of this terrifying fusion of iron and flesh, the rats appear.
Not just one or two, but suddenly everywhere.
The sheer force of the explosions, the vibrations through the earth, drive them from their deep, subterranean burrows, sending them scurrying in panicked hordes. You glimpse them in the flickering light of the explosions, dark shapes darting across the muddy floor, their sleek bodies glistening with damp, their beady eyes wide with a primal terror that mirrors your own. They are just as desperate, just as disoriented by the chaos.
Frantically seeking any escape, any refuge from the iron storm, they run over you, not caring.
Not even seeming to notice your presence in their blind terror.
A cold, furry body brushes your arm, a sharp claw scratches your hand as a rat scrambles past.
Another runs across your back, its weight surprisingly substantial. In any other circumstance, this intimate touch would trigger a violent, disgusted reaction. But now, in the midst of the barrage, the overwhelming fear for your life supersedes even the profound revulsion of the rats. Your mind is too preoccupied with survival, with bracing for the next explosion, to fully process the violation. Yet, the physical sensation, the chilling brush of their desperate flight, adds another grotesque layer to the horror of the shelling. You hear their frantic squeals, their high-pitched chittering, a chorus of tiny, terrified voices trying to rise above the deafening roar of the artillery. It's a sound that should be insignificant, yet in the moments between explosions it cuts through the remaining silence, amplifying the sense of chaos and the sheer, overwhelming presence of life clinging desperately to existence. The sight of them, caught in the open, darting back and forth, momentarily silhouetted against a blinding flash, is a stark visual representation of the terror gripping the trench. They are miniature mirrors of your own fear, tiny,
living manifestations of the absolute terror that pervades the battlefield. Sometimes,
in the momentary lull, you see them caught in the aftermath of an explosion. Their small, broken bodies, twisted and mangled, lie scattered amongst the shattered timbers and churned earth. A rat, disoriented and wounded, might stagger blindly through the debris, its movements jerky and unnatural before finally collapsing. The irony isn't lost on you. Even the rats, these masters of the underground, these survivors of unimaginable filth, are not immune to the indiscriminately brutal power of the artillery. Yet, even as you witness their demise, you know that countless others are still scurrying, still surviving, their numbers barely dented by the relentless bombardments. They are an eternal, regenerating foe. The presence of the rats during a barrage adds another dimension to the psychological torment. It's not just the fear of being blown to pieces, it's the added disgust of being jostled, crawled over, and surrounded by these repulsive creatures in your most vulnerable moments. The line between your own body and the infested, crumbling environment blurs even further. You are not just a soldier in a trench. You are an animal in a hole, surrounded by other terrified animals, all scrambling for survival under a rain of iron. This shared terror, this collective scramble, strips away another layer of your humanity, reducing you to a primal state of fear and survival. When the barrage finally lifts, leaving behind a ringing silence that is almost as deafening as the noise, you emerge from your hiding place dazed and shaken. The trench is even more a wreck than before, its walls collapsed in places, its floor churned into a deeper, more treacherous mud. And the rats, after their panicked flight, slowly begin to reappear, cautiously emerging from their temporary hiding places, resuming their endless foraging amidst the new debris, the new dead. Their resilience is almost as terrifying as their presence. They are a constant living testament to the enduring, brutal reality of the trench, a permanent fixture in the landscape of despair, and an unforgettable companion, even amidst the deafening horror of an artillery barrage. Their frantic, desperate scurrying becomes another indelible image in the nightmare of war, a grim dance between iron and flesh. The trenches are a place of profound isolation, yet paradoxically a crucible of intense camaraderie. You are surrounded by men shoulder to shoulder, day in and day out, sharing every hardship, every fear, every meager comfort. And in this shared existence, a deep, unspoken bond is forged, not just in the face of the enemy, but in the collective struggle against the pervasive, intimate horrors of the environment itself, especially the rats. They become a common enemy, a shared revulsion, a strange, repulsive touchstone for your collective experience. You watch your trench mates, their faces etched with the same weary resignation, the same haunted look in their eyes that you now recognize in yourself. You see their reactions to the rats, the sudden flinch, the muttered curse, the frustrated kick at a scurrying shadow. These are not isolated incidents. They are universal experiences understood without words. When a man yells out in the dead of night, having woken to a rat crawling on him, there's an immediate, empathetic understanding from the others. No one laughs, no one scolds. There's only a quiet murmur of acknowledgement, a shared recognition of the profound violation. You know exactly how he feels because it has happened to you or will happen to you countless times. The fight against the rats becomes a collective, if largely futile, effort. You observe a comrade meticulously wrapping his meager rations in multiple layers of cloth, then securing them high above his head with a piece of wire. You adopt the same method, learning from his desperation, recognizing the wisdom born of bitter experience. When you see a rat brazenly stealing food from another soldier, there's a shared groan of frustration, a collective outpouring of sympathy for the victim, a mutual understanding of the anger and helplessness that accompanies such a loss. This isn't just about an individual's food. It's about a collective affront to your collective struggle for survival. Dark, grim humor often springs from these shared horrors. Jokes about the trench pets or the messmates are exchanged, a way to lighten the suffocating weight of the rat infestation. You hear men boasting about the size of the rat they killed, or sharing strategies for catching them, or telling outlandish tales of their cunning. The laughter that follows is often brittle, a desperate, almost hysterical release of tension. But it is laughter nonetheless, a brief flicker of shared humanity in the face of dehumanizing conditions. This shared gallows humor creates a peculiar kind of intimacy, a bond forged in the crucible of mutual disgust and suffering. There's a silent, unspoken understanding when a man, driven to the brink by the incessant scuttling or a particularly brazen rat, lashes out with his bayonet or a club.
No one judges him for the sudden burst of violence.
Instead, there's a nod of recognition, a silent acknowledgement of the breaking point, the moment when the sheer irritation and revulsion become unbearable. You understand the need for that physical release, that desperate attempt to assert dominance, however fleeting, over a foe that seems utterly unconquerable. It's an act of shared frustration, a desperate attempt to reclaim a sliver of control in a world where control is an illusion. When a fresh recruit arrives, wide-eyed and relatively clean, the veterans watch him with a mixture of pity and grim amusement. They know what awaits him. They know about the mud, the cold, the shells, and they know with absolute certainty about the rats. And when the new arrival experiences his first intimate encounter with a rat, when he wakes screaming or lashes out in a panic, there's no judgment. Only a shared knowing glance, a silent confirmation that he is now truly one of them, initiated into the deepest, most repulsive horrors of the trench. The rats, in a strange, perverse way, become a shared rite of passage, a common experience that binds every soldier together. This unspoken bond, forged in the shared suffering and the intimate presence of the rats, creates a profound sense of camaraderie. You are all in this together, facing the same external enemy and fighting the same internal war against the vermin that infest your very existence. This collective struggle against the rats becomes a metaphor for the larger war, an unending, brutal fight against an overwhelming, pervasive force. The shared disgust, the shared frustration, the shared vulnerability to these repulsive creatures deepens the ties between you and your comrades, creating a sense of unity that transcends rank or background. You become a collective, a brotherhood bound by mud, blood, and the pervasive, inescapable presence of the rats. This shared horror, however repulsive, creates a bond that will endure long after the trenches are filled in and the war is just a fading memory. The war, with its deafening roar and visceral horrors, eventually comes to an end. You survive. You somehow endure the mud, the cold, the shells, the hunger, the constant threat of death. And you escape the rats. You are finally pulled out of the line for good, repatriated, sent back to a world that feels impossibly clean, impossibly quiet, impossibly normal. But the trenches and their pervasive, intimate inhabitants have left an indelible mark, an unseen wound that festers deep within your psyche, long after the physical scars have faded. The initial transition back to civilian life is jarring, disorienting. The sheer silence is deafening, an unnatural void after months or years of constant noise. The clean streets, the fresh smells, the absence of mud, all feel alien, almost offensive in their purity. You walk with a nervous tremor, your senses still hyper-alert, flinching at unexpected sounds, scanning every shadow, perpetually on edge. Your family and friends try to understand, to welcome you back, but there's a chasm between your experience and their understanding, a profound disconnect that leaves you feeling isolated,
Fundamentally changed. And then the rats.
or rather the memory of them. The profound aversion you developed in the trenches doesn't simply vanish when you leave the front. It lingers, an insidious residue, deeply embedded in your subconscious. A sudden rustle in the bushes, the scuttling sound of a mouse in a quiet house, the sight of a rat in a city alley. These innocuous encounters can trigger a violent, visceral reaction. Your heart pounds, a cold sweat breaks out, your stomach lurches with a familiar wave of profound revulsion. The memory of their touch, their smell, their audacious presence floods your mind, transporting you instantly back to the muddy, suffocating confines of the trench. You find yourself compulsively checking corners, scanning floors, unable to fully shake the vigilance that was so necessary for survival. The habit of protecting your food, of securing it meticulously, persists even in the safety of your own home. You might find yourself unconsciously shying away from dark, enclosed spaces, or feeling an irrational anxiety about leaving food out overnight. These are not just quirks. They are deep-seated behavioral patterns, psychological echoes of a life lived in constant, intimate proximity to vermin. The nightmares, too, follow you home. You wake in a cold sweat, screaming perhaps, thrashing in your bed, convinced for a terrifying moment that a rat is crawling on your face, its cold nose twitching, its beady eyes inches from your own. The sensations are so vivid, so real, that it takes minutes, sometimes longer, for you to fully reorient yourself, to realize you are safe in your own bed, far from the horrors of the trench. These nightmares are a cruel reminder that even in sleep, you are not free from the relentless, insidious presence of the rats, that they have invaded the deepest recesses of your mind. The profound sense of degradation, of having been reduced to an animal struggling for survival amongst vermin, leaves a lasting scar on your self-perception. You may struggle with feelings of shame, of having been tainted by the experience, of having lost a part of your humanity in that putrefying hole in the ground. The casual cleanliness and comfort of civilian life can feel almost alien, sometimes even undeserved, after the brutal squalor you endured. Your sense of dignity has been irrevocably altered, a permanent erosion of self that is difficult to articulate, impossible for others to truly comprehend. Talking about it, truly talking about the rats, is difficult. How do you explain to someone who has never experienced it the absolute horror of sharing your bed with them, of watching them feast on your fallen comrades, of their incessant scuttling under your very feet? The words feel inadequate, the explanations insufficient to convey the depth of the revulsion, the profound trauma. So, often, you keep it to yourself, retreating into a private world of memory and unspoken suffering, further deepening the chasm between yourself and those who love you. The aversion can manifest in unexpected ways. A phobia of enclosed spaces, a heightened sensitivity to smells, an inability to tolerate any form of unhygienic conditions. These are not mere eccentricities, they are symptoms of a deep, unseen wound, a lasting psychological impact that the rats, as much as the shells and the mud, have inflicted upon you. They are a constant, living legacy of the trenches, a testament to the profound and lasting psychological scars that war, in its most degrading forms, leaves upon the human spirit. You may have left the battlefield, but the battlefield and its rats will never truly leave you. The contrast is stark, brutally so, and it serves as a constant, subtle torment to your psyche. Occasionally, during a quiet period, if you're lucky enough to be in a part of the trench where the parapet hasn't entirely collapsed, you might glimpse it, the world above. A sliver of blue sky, perhaps a fluffy white cloud drifting lazily across it. A distant, solitary bird, a lark or a sparrow flitting across the wire, utterly oblivious to the hellscape beneath it. A few stunted, shattered trees, their branches devoid of leaves, still reaching defiantly towards the heavens, symbols of a life that once was, a nature that struggles to persist. For a fleeting moment, you allow your gaze to linger on that distant, impossible horizon. You remember a world of green fields, of sunlight filtering through lush canopies, of clean air, of birdsong that was pure and unmarred by the clang of artillery. You recall the feeling of firm, dry earth beneath your feet, the simple pleasure of walking upright, of breathing air that didn't taste of decay and cordite. It's a tantalizing glimpse of sanity, a heartbreaking reminder of the beauty and normalcy that exists just beyond the muddy, rat-infested confines of your subterranean prison. But the moment quickly passes. Your eyes drop, pulled back by the sheer weight of your surroundings, by the inescapable reality of the hell below. The transition is abrupt, jarring, a plunge from light into a suffocating darkness. Your gaze falls upon the muddy floor, the perpetually damp walls, the discarded detritus of human suffering, and the omnipresent evidence of the rats. The contrast is a punch to the gut, a cruel reassertion of your degraded existence. The world above feels impossibly distant, a dream you once had, while the hell below is brutally, viscerally real. The rats, in their relentless subterranean existence, embody this stark dichotomy. They thrive in the darkness, in the mud, in the filth, in the very conditions that make your life a living nightmare. They are creatures of the underworld, perfectly adapted to this man-made hell. While you crane your neck, longing for a glimpse of the sky, they scurry in the shadows, burrowing deeper into the earth, utterly content in their dominion over the decay and the dead. They are a constant living reminder that this trench, this place of profound unnaturalness, is their natural habitat and by extension, yours. A bird flying overhead, its song momentarily piercing the distant rumble of the guns, is a symbol of freedom of the untainted natural world. But the rats, crawling over your sleeping body, stealing your food, feasting on your comrades, are symbols of imprisonment, of degradation, of the utter destruction of natural order. They are the antithesis of everything clean, free, and beautiful, thriving on the very horrors that destroy your spirit. Their presence underscores the profound unnaturalness of your existence, the complete inversion of a normal human life. You might see a patch of wildflowers, miraculously surviving in some shell-scarred field behind the lines, their vibrant colors a startling contrast to the browns and grays of the landscape. For a moment, a flicker of something almost joyful touches your heart. But then, you step back into the trench, and a rat, fat and sleek, scurries across your path, dragging a piece of discarded meat into its hole. The beauty of the flowers is instantly overshadowed by the repugnant reality of the vermin. The world above offers fleeting glimpses of hope, but the hell below, with its teeming, filthy inhabitants, quickly reclaims your mind. This constant oscillation between the idealized memory of the world above and the brutal reality of the hell below amplified by the pervasive presence of the rats, creates a profound sense of psychological dissonance. Your mind struggles to reconcile these two realities. It's a form of torture, a tantalizing display of what you've lost, what you're missing, what you might never fully experience again. The rats, in their unflinching acceptance of the abyss, become a mirror of your own slow descent into that same abyss. A chilling reminder of how much of your humanity you are losing day by day. In this infernal hole, the memory of the world above becomes a fragile,
Precious thing, something you cling to in moments of despair.
but the reality of the hell below, with its pervasive filth and its ubiquitous, intimate companions, is always there, dragging you back, consuming your thoughts, dulling your senses, and constantly reminding you that you are a creature of the trench now, a dweller in the dark, sharing your existence with the silent.
Scuttling masters of the underworld.
The world above is a fading dream. The hell below, with its rats, is your stark, undeniable reality. The constant, pervasive presence of the rats in the trenches is not just a nuisance or a threat. It is an intimate, unrelenting violation of your personal space, a profound loss of dignity that etches itself into your very being. You may be armed, you may be a soldier, but in this domain you are stripped of your conventional power, reduced to an animal struggling for survival, intimately entangled with creatures you abhor. This is the unforgettable embrace, not of a loved one, but of the unwanted, a repulsive bond forged in the crucible of filth and despair. From the moment you arrive, your personal boundaries begin to erode. The trench itself is a collective space with no privacy, no true solitude. You are always among other men, always exposed to their sounds, their smells, their discomforts. But the rats take this erosion a step further. They penetrate the very last vestiges of your personal sanctuary, the small, imagined bubble of safety you try to maintain around yourself. They crawl through your dugout, they scurry under your blanket, they brush against your sleeping body. There is no wall, no barrier, no space that is truly yours, free from their pervasive,
Intrusive presence, the feeling of a rat crawling on you.
in the dead of night, as you lie exhausted and vulnerable, is a profound violation. It's not just the physical sensation which is repulsive enough, but the psychological impact of being utterly helpless, utterly exposed to a creature you despise. Your skin crawls, not just with their actual touch, but with the imagined lingering sensation, a phantom itch that persists long after they have gone. Your mind replays the moment, the terror, the disgust, the inability to react without risking a bite or startling the creature into a more intimate, terrifying proximity. This intimate intrusion, night after night, slowly breaks down your mental defenses, leaving you feeling perpetually exposed, perpetually contaminated. Their audacity is a constant affront. You might be eating your meager rations held close, and a rat will appear, brazenly watching you, its beady eyes fixed on your food, its whiskers twitching with an unnerving confidence. It's a silent challenge, a profound act of disrespect, an assertion of their dominion over this grim landscape.
They are not afraid of you.
In this environment, humans are just another source of sustenance, another part of the ecosystem they have so thoroughly conquered. Their fearless approach, their casual intrusion into your most basic acts of survival is deeply dehumanizing, reducing you to a mere competitor in a desperate struggle for scraps. The constant battle for your food, for your personal space, becomes a never-ending siege. You invent elaborate methods to protect your belongings, to keep them out of reach, but the rats are relentless, cunning, and seemingly inexhaustible. They gnaw through leather, through wood, through cloth, their powerful teeth making short work of your flimsy defenses. Each successful raid, each contaminated ration, each discarded item with telltale teeth marks,
Is a small victory for them, a small defeat for you.
chipping away at your sense of control and resilience. The loss of dignity is perhaps the most insidious consequence of this unforgettable embrace. To live in such close, intimate proximity to vermin to constantly battle for your basic needs against creatures of filth, to be woken by their crawling touch, to witness their feasting on the dead. It all works to strip away your sense of self, your identity as a human being. You are reduced to a more primal state, a creature surviving in a hole, covered in mud and lice, constantly fighting against an overwhelming tide of degradation. The rats are a constant living mirror reflecting this profound loss of human dignity back at you. This intimate, repulsive relationship with the rats becomes an indelible part of your trench experience. It's a memory that will cling to you long after the war, a sensation that will trigger phantom itches, a nightmare that will invade your sleep. The unforgettable embrace of the unwanted, this profound violation of personal space and dignity, leaves an unseen wound, a psychological scar that is as deep and as lasting as any physical injury. It is a constant, visceral reminder that in the hell of the trenches, you are not just a soldier fighting a war, but a human stripped bare, forced into an unimaginable intimacy with the lowest forms of life, forever tainted by their pervasive, repulsive presence. You're back now, truly back. The uniform is long gone, the mud washed from your skin, the sounds of artillery a distant, fading memory. Your home is warm, dry and clean. You have a comfortable bed, food in the larder, and the profound luxury of privacy. But as you lie there, nestled in your modern comforts, perhaps listening to the gentle hum of your refrigerator, or the soft rain against the window pane, the echoes of the trenches and their pervasive, intimate companions still resonate within you. The indelible stain remains, a profound testament to a reality that shaped a generation. Think for a moment about your room right now. The clean sheets, the solid walls, the sense of security. Imagine those walls as damp, crumbling earth. Imagine the floor beneath you as a viscous, sucking mud. Imagine the air thick with the stench of decay, human waste, cordite, and unwashed bodies. Now overlay all of that with the incessant, chilling sounds of tiny claws scratching, of frantic scuttling, of high-pitched squeaks. Imagine, too, the pervasive, musky odor of hundreds, thousands of rats, their beady eyes glinting in the darkness, their sleek bodies darting through the shadows, always watching, always waiting. This was the everyday reality for millions of men, not just for a moment, but for weeks, months, sometimes years. They lived with the constant threat of enemy fire, the crushing cold, the gnawing hunger, and the pervasive, intimate presence of these creatures. The rats weren't just a nuisance. They were a living, breathing part of the trench ecosystem, a physical manifestation of the war's ultimate degradation. They were scavengers of the dead, carriers of disease, thieves of precious rations, and the uninvited companions who shared the soldiers' most vulnerable moments, crawling over their sleeping bodies. Consider the sheer psychological toll of such an existence. The constant vigilance, the profound disgust, the loss of dignity, the relentless assault on every sense. The memory of their touch, their cold, dry feet, their twitching whiskers, the sound of their teeth gnawing at unseen horrors. These sensations burrowed deep into the soldiers' minds, leaving scars that no amount of time or comfort could fully erase. The rats became a symbol of the war itself, an overwhelming, pervasive, degrading force that was impossible to defeat, impossible to escape. You have the privilege of cleanliness, of warmth, of safety, of food, free from contamination. You can sleep soundly without the fear of a creature crawling over your face. You can walk through your home without stepping in mud or human waste, without seeing the telltale signs of vermin. These are not small things. They are fundamental aspects of human dignity and well-being that were utterly stripped away from the soldiers in the trenches. So as you drift off tonight, let this story resonate. Let it be a stark reminder of the sacrifices made, not just on the battlefield, but in the insidious, intimate horrors of everyday trench life. The men who fought in World War I faced not only human enemies, but an entire ecosystem of degradation, with the rats as its most persistent, most repulsive agents. Their stories are not just about grand battles, but about profound endurance, about clinging to a sliver of humanity in conditions designed to utterly destroy it. The echoes of their struggle and the indelible stain of their intimate encounters with the rats serve as a powerful, visceral lesson. They remind us of the true cost of war, stripped of its romanticized myths, laid bare in its brutal, dehumanizing reality. It's a reminder to cherish the peace, the cleanliness, the dignity that so many before us fought and suffered for. May their unseen wounds and the horrors they endured never be forgotten. Sleep well, knowing that you live in a world far removed from the muddy, rat-infested embrace of the trenches.